With the new recommendations from the ADA that dental students and international dentists should be able to work as hygienists without taking a board exam, what type of conversations should we have in our dental practice? Let's find out.
Making it happen, and we so passionate. Right. With dental training, growing your dental practices every single day. Gotta keep rising, be a better version of you. We call it Kaizen. Yeah, practice biopsy. Going up, no stopping. Yeah, practice biopsy. Let's go.
Hey everybody, I have a very special guest. Actually, a very special guest has me. And if you guys don't know Dr. D'Angelo Webster, you will now. D'Angelo and I have talked quite a bit, and we have a lot of similar attitudes. We also have a lot of curiosities about each other. And D'Angelo was asked to talk to me about a few spicy subjects in dentistry today. So I'm going to sit back. I'm going to let D'Angelo be the host. We'll put it here, and we'll put it also on D'Angelo's practice biopsy site, which is a very, very fascinating place to be. D'Angelo's got these points of view that are just, they're kind of like, why didn't I think of that? And they may not, all of his ideas may not be for everybody, but we have to know, number one, that Alanism number 18, more than one right answer. Number two, this is a very, very bright, very well-motivated, heartfelt young gentleman who happens to have a very strong head on his shoulders. So D'Angelo, welcome. I am honored to be in your presence, and I am honored to help you in your mission any way you want.
Hey, Ellen. Thanks for having me on again. It's always nice to talk to you, whether it's in a public venue like this or if it's just like a personal phone call. I always appreciate our conversation.
Fun. Always fun.
So what I want to talk about today that I think would be a beneficial topic to the group is the idea of listening in the context of leadership. Okay. The dentist, whether they own the practice or not, they really do have a leadership role in the office, particularly if they're the owner, but even as an associate, the other team members really will look to the dentist to set the tone, read off of their energy and, as a leader in the practice. So I want to talk about that broadly, but the first thing I want to talk about is to get your opinion and your insight on a conversation that was really heavy in a lot of dental offices last week, which was the statement that came out from the ADA where they voted and passed a recommendation that dental students and international dentists would be able to work as hygienists in dental offices without taking any sort of board exam.
Yeah.
And that got a very emotional response in the overall dental hygienist community. So I'd like to see what your thoughts are on that.
Emotional? That just goes to show you're a gentleman as well as a bright guy. Yeah, I would put it mildly. And you know what? I understand why our hygienist colleagues would react that way. Remember, Alanism number 32, anger is fear in disguise. And there's a lot to be afraid of in their perception. But it doesn't have to be that way. But let's look at the big problem first, and then we'll break it down a little further.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, D'Angelo, that there is an acute shortage of people to render hygiene services. Practices are booked tremendously, and hygienists are working down to carpal tunnel syndrome trying to keep up with the demand. At the same time, hygienists are leaving because of that. At the same time, unfortunately, those practitioners who are subject to third-party reimbursement dependency, they're seeing their revenues come down for hygiene. They're seeing a complete lack of appreciation by the people they're serving. So number one, I don't blame hygienists at this point if they're in an employment situation that have those conditions. However, it's about the patient. And if the dental hygiene profession has not fed enough individuals into the system, what are we supposed to do? We have to have some minimal standard, yes. A board exam, well, they're even questioning whether dental board hands-on exams are even valid at this point.
Right.
There's a movement away from that. Those crazy skills where if you're having a bad day and you slip, you all of a sudden lose your ability to earn an income for X number of months until you can take the test again. I think, D'Angelo, look, you can do a prophy. I haven't picked up an instrument in a year. I'll come work in your office.
We'd be
If
happy to have you.
if you'll hire me, I could be more trouble than I'm worth. And it's not that we're having idiots do it. We're having people who have a basic education and will limit the scope of their practice to what it is safe for them to do. That is a state regulatory board's responsibility, and we have to have them fulfill that. But the question is to the hygienist, first of all, put your emotions aside just for a moment. Just for a moment, I promise we'll come back to it. But what are these patients going to do? We can't, it's unhealthy for them to be running around without hygiene appointments every X number of months for their maintenance.
I'll tell you, just to interject,
Please.
in my practice, solo practitioner, I have roughly 2,000 patients who are overdue for their prophy.
Wow. Yeah, so it's not what Dr. Webster is, what's Dr. Webster supposed to do. It's what are the 2,000 people supposed to do? And they could call Dr. Smith, Dr. Jones down the street, and they could have 2,000 people backed up. We have to have a stopgap measure in order to make this work. And if this is the best we could think of right now, then let's let it ride and see how it works. May I go to the next level? You have something else to ask me to lead me to what I want.
Yeah, go ahead. Go to the next, go to where you're going to take it next.
So the next level, and to the hygienists out there, the hygienist that was with me for 17 years and the one that was with me for 8 or 9 years before, they are like daughters to me and to my wife, who was my front desk person. I could not have gotten along without a hygienist. I'm forever grateful to the dental hygienists of the world, and I think you serve a very critical purpose. And I think what you all need to do, what I would very humbly and from my heart and my brain recommend, is that you up that standard of care. You know darned well, hygienists, that it's not just about cleaning teeth. That is the bare bones minimum that Webster's office can do right now. But we have oral systemic, we have oral cancer detection, we have patient education, or I like to call it patient collaboration. These are skills you all have, and these are skills I would love you all to develop and raise that bar. The other thing we have to understand, and money's a tough subject. Money, dentists treat three very sensitive body parts. We've talked about this, D'Angelo. We treat the mouth, we treat the psyche, because how we feel about our mouths is important. But the wallet is a very, very sensitive body part for us and for them. But hygienists, we need to realize that a salary that is sustainable really has to happen here.
I
And
think during the pandemic, and because of the acute situations, we saw the same thing in nursing. Like temp nurses had these outrageous salaries, and it was acute to the time. And
yeah,
I think that a lot of the acute wage inflation in hygiene was not sustainable. But a lot of offices didn't want to go backtrack and say, hey, I actually need to give you a pay cut. They didn't want to do that. So they operated under an unsustainable wage model, which resulted in the situation heading in where we are now. We're like, well, this is not affordable. I guess I need to get a dental student to do this
yeah.
because I
So
can.
you know what dental instruments are going to be the most critical instruments in solving this problem?
I know what you're going to say.
Did you and I have this? We may not have this discussion, but
Yeah.
one of my, yes,
Uh,
that's why you're so good, D'Angelo. You're an A+ student. Our most important dental instruments, dentists and hygienists alike, are here. And since I belong to a college fraternity, there's a little less gray matter here.
mhm.
But I think we need to, docs and hygienists, owners and hygienists, really need to sit down and have a vulnerable, transparent discussion of what the heck is going on here. Because if the practice is bleeding dollars, and the hygienist is not producing, I hate that word, but right now, is not generating 3 times his or her salary, then that model is not sustainable. We have 2 choices. We can increase our fees that reflect the value of what the hygienist is doing.
Which if you're a PPO office, you can't do.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time.
Mm.
But and I'm not putting down PPO offices, by the way, because somebody has to deliver the services for that part of the population that truly cannot afford a fee-for-service out-of-network practice. In a PPO practice, you have 1.5 choices. Your obvious choice is to increase your volume, and your 0.5 choice is to sit down with the third-party payer and say, hey, look, guys, I got 2,000 patients backed up here. I can't do it with the conditions you're setting me. Something's got to give. And I believe that the hygienist needs to be part of that discussion with the owner docs. We all need to sit down and say, hey, this is nonsense. You put a hygienist or a dentist in a situation where they're running around like crazy, they're going to burn out. I know a hygienist whose hands couldn't take it anymore.
Yep.
And I'm sure if I know one, there's a lot of others out there.
Mhm.
And dentists are going to make mistakes. So
And
we,
rushing.
yeah. And I think,
Because I mean the easy solution, which has physical repercussions, is you just cut the appointment time. You see 2 or 3 patients an hour when you were seeing one. That makes the math work, but it makes other things not work.
yes. And you know, the big thing that won't work there, D'Angelo, is the hygienist's frame of mind.
Hmm.
The hygienist doesn't have time to even think about what he or she is doing. The hygienist doesn't have time to connect with that other human being. I think the greatest joy in what I did for 42 years was the ability to just say, hey, how are you? How's it feeling? Tell me how you've made progress in your health. Tell me about your family. Tell me the pressures that you're under now so I could be a better doc to you. And even the hygienist, when the hygienist brings that human being in and goes over their history of the last 6 months, don't you think that information is going to be critical for the dentist to come in and begin treatment planning, and for that patient, that human being, to feel like they're being listened to? Listening is that skill that takes time, that we don't have a tangible reimbursement for, but it opens up the door to everything, everything. So I think we need to talk. I think we need to stop throwing digital F bombs at each other. I'm from New
You don't
Jersey.
have to be on Facebook long to see.
Yeah, we don't need that. Nothing constructive is going to happen where we're cursing out the dentist, cursing out the hygienist, cursing out the system. All we're doing there is putting our fist through a wall, and that just breaks our knuckles. I think it is time for all of us to realize that we are in trouble here and we are vulnerable. We're getting hurt. Our morale is down. Our salaries are down and are only being threatened to go further. And I think we need to lay that on the table. And as a group, I know you're really good at this, D'Angelo. You wouldn't be talking to me. You wouldn't be asking me about this if you weren't. But you say, hey guys, what do we do about this? And start working on solutions as a community, not even as a team anymore, as a community of caregivers who really give a damn about the office, about the patients, about the mission. Your mission, D'Angelo, is really important. You are bringing droves of dentistry to people who never, ever think of going to a dentist. I watch what you're doing, and it's great. You're being you. You're practicing your values in your office in your way. And it's my hope that everybody in your office is connected to that sacred mission. And perhaps if the D'Angelo Websters of the world would say, all right, guys, we got a problem here, and devote a staff meeting, devote a couple of hours, a couple of times, and see what kind of solutions you all can come up with.
My staff did sit down and talk when that letter came out. And something that a statement that came out of that meeting is something which ties into what we just said about you don't have to be on Facebook or social media for long to see, uh, the digital F-bombs. But one of my team members said that policy that came out recently is just the reflective of a long, she said it was reflective of a long-standing animosity in most offices between the dentists and the hygienists. What are your thoughts on that
I think
potential long-standing animosity between dentists and hygienists, and where do you think it could come from?
I think that's been we did a program on that during the lockdown. Myself and my professional big sisters, Mary Osborne and Joan Unterschutz, and Dr. Dave Karsten. Dave runs the GPR at OHSU. Mary Osborne is one of the most brilliant minds in dentistry. She calls herself a recovering hygienist.
Yeah.
And Joan Unterschutz has a serious background in dentistry and psychology. And I think that pot has been simmering since way before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
way before COVID. And I'll tell you why. I think, I think dentists, my generation, a culpa, not mea culpa, a culpa, because for generations, dental auxiliaries, as we called them, boy, that was a crappy term, but they were underpaid and under-respected. They were being referred to as the girls. And I call BS on that. I believe that for decades, hygienists and assistants were being grossly underpaid. They were just being paid a prevailing wage and being pressured to do what they had to do, with exception. The better practices were really in tune. Mary worked for dentists who were Pankey trained,
Mm-hmm.
and they really got together on a very high level with people. They were, a fee-for-service practice. And those practices that did well were able to build a team decades before it was imperative that we do that. But in the large masses of dentists, it's been a simmering pot, and COVID blew it open. COVID blew it open because hygienists, rightfully, were asking for PPE that would protect them, assistants as well. And when the dentists saw what that stuff cost, as a group, they were saying, oh my goodness gracious, how can we afford this? And that was, tunnel vision thinking. And that blew that tension right out of the pressure cooker. And it hasn't been healed yet. So this latest wave is just another eruption of volcano that hasn't been calmed down yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're real close, D'Angelo, and I know a lot of practices who are real close or there, and that is getting together, uniting under the mission of the practice. We have to realize that the work we do in our offices is much bigger than any one of us, even you, even me. I sold my practice. I'm gone. My practice is still going.
Mm-hmm.
God willing, in a couple of months, just kidding, you'll sell your practice. Maybe a couple of 100 months,
Yeah.
and you'll sell it to a worthy purchaser, and the practice will go on. We've all had turnover, the practice goes on. But what remains steady is the mission of the practice. I think we're talking about listening and leadership now. I think the first thing I would do if I have no hygienist and I have 2,000 people banging my door down, I would sit down with my team and, number one, ask them all, why would anybody in their right mind want to work here? Number two, what is our mission? What do we do here? Let's get refocused on it and bring somebody in who is like-minded and understands and buys into the mission of the office, whether it is delivering large volumes of dentistry, whether it is a not-for-profit or an FQHC, whether it's American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry practice or a Pankey practice or a Spirit Voice practice. What do we do and why? And do you all buy into the why? If your heart and soul are in there, then you all will have a greater likelihood of coming up with an answer to this thing. It could be extra team. It could be higher fees. It could be sitting down with a PPO and saying, "Listen, guys, something's got to give here, or else we need to flex our power, but we can't do it independently. We can't go on throwing f bombs at the dentists or the hygienists, the assistants, and the office managers. We got to say, let's do something and let's start thriving."
I like that. I think that's a great dialogue, I've got dialogue talking point to have with our teams. And it's not like you can really ignore it because if you ignore
No.
these conversations, you know what happens.
Yep, yep. The revolving door.
Mhm.
So
Uh,
I would
I've
ask,
been very fortunate to not have really any turnover with my hygiene team. I have four hygienists, and when we talk about it in our office, it's more of just like a talking point of what's going on um, in the dental community at large. I'm really grateful and lucky that I have four amazing dental hygienists who I think really do and buy into my goals for patient care and
mhm,
taking care of our patients. Um, I just would like a bigger building, but I don't want to move.
but I think, I've watched some of the things that you've posted about how you built your practice basically from bargain basement opportunities.
Mhm.
And you've turned that into a thriving, not only a revenue source, but a force for good in the community. So that is one right answer, and that's your right answer. If a dentist, and this is a good point for the hygienists also, if a dentist goes and looks down to the Taj Mahal practice down the road and feels themselves as inadequate, that doesn't do any good. Comparison trap, it doesn't work. You're doing awesome things in that, what you call a little office. I've known hygienists who have left really good positions for the allure of that $12 zillion an hour practice, only to burn their hands out and come back, tattered, disillusioned, or even out.
Yeah.
So I think many practices would be better off doing is sitting down as a group and saying, what's our desired outcome? What do we want to do for patients? What does case complete look like? What is our mission? And let's get that in writing and let's build it together. One of the very few smart business things I did was when I had a total turnover, I sat down with everybody and said, all right, we're starting from scratch. Let's build a new mission statement. And we worked a couple of hours over a couple of team meetings, and we dummied it down, with all of our visions, and we wrote a mission statement. That way we all owned it. We were all centered on it. Perfectly? Never. Pretty good? Yeah. Remember that also. And also, as I mentioned before, if you and your world-class hygienist, D'Angelo, are struggling, let's say hypothetically, for a new assistant or assistants,
Mhm.
the question to ask is, why would anybody in their right mind want to work here?
Yeah.
And let's
Yep.
go
Get an answer.
through all of the great points about the office. And the second question is, what do we do great? And not what do we screw up or what are we bad at, but what can we do better? And put all that information together. And you're looking for those people who buy into the mission, who fit the practice culture, and who may be able to help shore up where we need to be doing better. Stop thinking short term, stop thinking stopgap, and start thinking about long term. You may have to hire stopgap for a while, but stay focused on that big picture.
Along with that big picture, something we talked about before we started recording. So I recently read something, and it it was a study that talked about how if someone gets a raise, they'll have like an initial burst of happiness. But in the study in the long term, when they compared different people of different job positions, of different wage levels, different salaries, they found almost no correlation between an individual's level of pay and their level of job satisfaction. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that concept
Yeah.
and what you've seen in your experience over a dental career?
Decades ago, I learned this. I think it was from Dr. Michael Schuster, many, many decades back in the 90s. You might not even have been born. Oh, God. Money attracts, pride retains. And we're seeing that. I mean, I saw talk online that hygienists were being offered, what, 90, $100 an hour or maybe more.
Hmm.
And, that's a great revenue source for the hand surgeons to fix carpal tunnel syndrome and for the therapists to fix burnout and for headhunters to find these beautiful people new careers.
Yeah.
I think the question, and it even holds true for dentists, associates, and owners, what's your bare minimum? How much do you really need to put the essentials on the table? Keep the lights on, pay the rent, the mortgage, pay for food, car insurance, feed your children, save for education, save for retirement. What's that number? Have you gone over that? Then you ask yourself, what more do you want? And then you ask, what are you willing or able to do for it? I think it's very clear to me, everything I've read, Simon Sinek, Seth Godin, all the books I'm reading, it's all about happiness, especially in your generation and younger. I think people have caught on to the false value of money, that more and more money is the only way to be happy in life. It's not true. We're entitled to three unalienable rights in this country: life, liberty, and the pursuit of a Tesla. No, no, no. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of a big house on an island. No, no, no. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, yes, owners, corporations, you've got to pay these people a respectful wage. You've got to. You've got to make them understand what it takes to sustain that wage. And to the great people who are doing the work, you have to understand that to earn more, you have to do more. And I'm not being cruel, I'm being real. The money comes from what we give to people. Money is something that's exchanged in exchange for something of value. So you need to understand your value, how much of it you're willing and able to provide, and settle into a groove where you're happy coming into work. $100 an hour, or for a dentist, $600 an hour, that's beautiful. But will you be happy sustaining that income level? And if the answer is no, then come to grips with it and find a position that will give you the happiness at a reasonable wage point, at a reasonable take-home income. We got to be happy. We hear too many stories, D'Angelo, of doctors and patients and teams snapping, going and flying off the handle. When a patient comes in upset, everybody loses it because everybody's on edge.
Yeah.
Be comfortable in your own professional skin. Make sure you know it's about the other guy. Make sure you know it's all about the team. It's about the patient. It's about the mission. It's about the owner doc. Everybody's got to be in a giving mindset, an outward mindset. I'm here to take care of you while I'm satisfying my need for sustenance and for happiness. Focus on why you went into dentistry and what about the job makes you happy, and work that end of it. The money will come. The money will come.
I think you just briefly touched on something that I think is a really important mindset too. Like we're here to put food on the table, but as like the leader and it's the dentist who owns the practice, we are really there to take care of them too. Like the paycheck that they get from us is what they pay their bills with and they buy food for their kids with. Like the dental practice and by extension the dental practice that's managed by the dentist is what takes care of these people's families. And I think that that is something to not take for granted.
Very important point. Really important point. You've got an empathy skill that's off the charts, D'Angelo, because it isn't about you beyond a certain point. Yes, you took the risk. You're the entrepreneur, entrepreneur's risk taker, but you have settled into a lovely dental practice. Yeah, you want a bigger building. All right, fine. Maybe one day you'll get your bigger building, but right now your obligation is to see others and fulfill their needs.
Yeah.
Your patients, your team, your family.
Yeah.
You are here, you're in the middle, and you have arrows pointing outward at everybody in your professional and personal life, and you're here to serve them. So you've got a steady, established business. That business is not solely there. And you know what? I'm learning to hate the term make money. You're there to earn money.
Yeah.
And your team is there to earn money by serving others. Because just as you are in that center circle of the outward mindset, everybody in that team would be well off putting themselves in the circle. You're hygienists. How can I serve Doc? How can I serve the patients? How can I serve the mission? How can I serve my fellow teammates? The assistants and the administrators as well in your office. If they adopt that mindset, then all of these wars go away. Because, and for you, the leader, create a safe space where people can talk. Hey, Doc, um, my husband just lost his job, Doc Webster. I got to have health insurance. I know a young doctor who faced that situation
Mhm.
and didn't do it and lost a critical employee, a critical teammate, and has been reeling ever since. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do for these people.
I like that, Alan.
Yeah.
I think that's a really strong point. Almost to wrap things up, I don't want to take you too long. We've been going for about 40 minutes.
How do
Uh,
we really?
we've
No,
been
no.
going for 40 minutes, yeah.
And you put a mic in front of me and it just doesn't end.
I usually like to keep these about this long, so it's more bite-sized for our audience.
Yes.
But I think it's a fantastic conversation, and it gives a lot to think about for any dentist who's listening, because any dentist, even if you're not a practice owner, is a leader in that office, and people do look to you, and we do have an opportunity to really improve the lives of our team.
I got to tell you also, our hygienists, our assistants, and administrators, they're all leaders too,
Yeah,
because the patients are looking for them for leadership and guidance.
that's a really good point,
So,
Alan.
so let's make that clear. Our wonderful, beautiful, dynamic teammates, even if you are, even a dental assistant is not a dental assistant anymore. A dental assistant is a trained member of a professional community.
Yeah. I mean, and there's,
Administrators,
and there's so many opportunities for leadership within the office. I'll give an example
yes.
just from today. We want to have a Christmas party for the team around the holidays. Alan, I'm not taking the lead on that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
one of my team members, she stepped up and she's coordinating like how they're gonna like give gifts to each other and who likes what and where we're gonna go to eat.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to show up and pay for the meal. But she's really taken the lead with that to make sure that everyone feels appreciated and has a good time with the practice around the holidays. So that's just an example
Very
of
nice.
how really everyone has their corner of leadership in the practice. And I think if we serve the practice well and each other well and the patients well, then we'll be okay. And maybe we won't have that underlying tension that was brought to the forefront by that letter,
So,
at least some of it.
Angelo, keep leading by example and keep showing that example because we need it very badly.
Thanks,
We
Alan.
need it very badly. Thank you, D'Angelo.
Thank you.
To D'Angelo's community, the practice biopsy people, watch this guy. He's a leader. He may not do everything the way you do it, but man, he's got this 12,000 page book, and there are pearls in there for not just about everybody, for everybody. D'Angelo, you're a force for good in the world. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too, Alan.
All right. Take care, everybody.